Thank you. Yesterday, under oath, you told my colleagues on the Senate Finance Committee that when you went to Samoa in June of 2019, it, quote, had nothing to do with vaccines. Will you confirm again today that the trip had nothing to do with vaccines?
My purpose in going down there had nothing to do with vaccines.
Well, I have in my hand a blog post in 2021 in which you say the anti-vaccine group Children's Health Defense, which you ran, offered to fund the purpose of the trip to Samoa. And in the same post, you state that the trip was ultimately arranged by an anti-vaccine activist. And during the trip, you met with an activist who later compared vaccine mandates to Nazi Germany. And during that trip, you also discussed vaccines with the Prime Minister and the Director General of Health of Samoa. The Director General of Health said you specifically discussed your views on vaccine safety fears. And with unanimous consent, I will submit those blog posts, Mr. Chairman, into the record.
Without objection.
Can I reply to that, Senator?
I'm going to ask you, I'll ask you again. Did the trip have nothing to do with vaccines, as you told my colleagues on Senate Finance yesterday?
Nothing to do with vaccines. And if you want me to explain, I will.
Did it have anything to do with vaccines?
No, it did not.
It did not. Well,
my purpose in the trip was not to. I ended up having conversations with people, some of whom I never intended to meet.
Well, again, an anti-vaxxer helped finance your trip.
Well, you call them an anti-vaxxer. That's not what they would call themselves. They call themselves safe vaccine advocates. I went down there, a CHD, which was that group, offered $6 million to obtain a grant for $6 million to install to digitalize the health records of Samoa.
Right, well, let me just go on. I just want to
state-of-the-art medical informatics system.
Thank you,
that was the purpose of my trip, Senator.
I got it. Thank you. So let me just follow through now, 2019. So now in October of 2019, the CDC declared a measles outbreak in Samoa. And in November, Samoa started a mass vaccination campaign to stop the outbreak. That same month, November of 2019, after 16 people had already died from the outbreak and Samoa was trying to respond to the crisis, you sent a letter to the Prime Minister of Samoa stating that, quote, it is a regrettable possibility that these children are causalities of the vaccine. By unanimous consent, I will introduce that letter into the record.
Without objection.
So as Samoa was trying to contain the outbreak, you were saying that it was the fault of the vaccine rather than the absence of vaccinations that caused the outbreak in Samoa in the same year you visited Samoa.
And I replied to that, Senator.
Let me just finish. The death count in Samoa grew to 83. And ultimately, volunteers in New Zealand sent tiny coffins to help bury the dozens of children who died. And the Samoan Director General of Health later said, with his last name and the status attached to it, people will believe him. People will believe Robert Kennedy. And a New Zealand vaccinologist later said the impact of your role was devastating. So your name and your profile helped fuel a measles outbreak. You scared people from taking a vaccine. It slowed the public health response, and children died. You've taken no responsibility thus far, and if an outbreak occurs in the United States, I have no evidence that you would not use your role as secretary to spread dangerous misinformation. So that one incident, from my perspective, disqualifies you from holding any position in healthcare, much less the #1 health official in the United States. And 75 Nobel Prize winners in science have said very clearly that you should not be confirmed, that it would be dangerous for you to have
And you should look at their conflicts, Senator.
You
should look at their conflicts of those individuals.
Well, 75
and you should look at who financed that letter.
75 Nobel Prize winners, and by the way, of a high percentage of the medical community in Boston, the health capital of the United States and the world, have said the same thing about your qualifications. They're saying to me they don't want tiny coffins as well. Neither do I. So that's the basis of my reservations about you, and the reason why I'm going to vote no on your candidacy, because I just think it's too dangerous to run the threat that that misinformation is spread in our country in the same way it was in Samoa.